Chapter 25. Alice. It was nearly 11 p.m., and Alice was pounding the streets with Bunty in her buggy, trying to get her to go to sleep. It seemed to have worked, as the yells had morphed into snuffles, and for the last 15 minutes, blessed silence. Alice turned back toward home, desperate for some sleep herself. Who would have thought that a day would come when the things she wanted most in the world, more than money, sex, fame, or a pair of the latest Manolo Blahniks, was 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep? As Alice passed one of her favorite cafes, what was it called? Daphne's? Belinda's? Something old-fashioned. She stopped. The lights were on inside, and she could see two people dancing around the tables like an improbably perfect scene from the latest feel-good Hollywood romance. Alice knew she should move on, but her feet were welded to the ground. She watched from the comfortable anonymity of the dark pavement as the man looked down at the woman in his arms with such love and tenderness that she wanted to cry. At the beginning, Max had gazed at her as if she were a fairy tale princess, and he couldn't quite believe his luck. But he'd not looked at her that way for a long time. She suspected that watching the love of your life go through labor, with all the yelling, sweating, tearing, and bodily fluids involved, rather changed the view you had of them forever. She had asked him to stay at the head end, but he'd insisted on seeing his firstborn appear into the world, which had been, she was sure, a ghastly mistake. Apart from anything else, they'd needed to bring in an extra midwife to deal with Max when he keeled over and split his head open on the trolley. Just yesterday, Max had mistaken her hemorrhoid cream for his toothpaste. It was hardly any wonder there was little romance left in their relationship. Alice was certain that the girl in the movie playing in front of her did not have a young baby, stretch marks, or piles. She was free, unencumbered, independent. The world was her oyster. Then, as if to remind Alice that she herself was none of those things, Bunty started yelling, woken by the sudden cessation of movement from the buggy. Alice picked Bunty up, wrapped in her Brora cashmere blanket, wishing that she could feel something other than annoyance. To add injury to insult, Bunty wound her fists in Alice's hair and pulled them toward her mouth, yanking the hair at its roots. Then a bus went past, lighting up the pavement, and just at that moment, the girl in the cafe turned and looked at Alice with pity in her eyes. "You poor thing," she seemed to say. "Don't you wish you were me?" And she did. Alice's broken night had been interspersed with dreams about the couple in the cafe. Although in her dreams she was the woman dancing, and someone else, she didn't know who, was watching. Alice shook her head, trying to dislodge the vision so she could concentrate on the task in hand. All she managed to dislodge was her stupid festive headgear. Alice and Bunty were both wearing reindeer antlers. Alice angled Bunty so that their noses were almost touching. Bunty's full face with its beaming, gummy smile was in the picture, but you could only see Alice's honey gold highlights, courtesy of @DanielDoesHair, and a small amount of profile. Alice took a few shots to be on the safe side. Bunty's real name was Amelie, but they'd nicknamed her Baby Bunty in the few days after her birth, when they were still arguing about what to call her. Still arguing about pretty much everything, if truth be told. And the nickname had stuck. Now, @Baby Bunty had almost as many followers as @Alice in Wonderland. Alice pulled up the best of the shots on Facetune and whitened the small amount of her eye in the shot, removed the dark shadow underneath it, and erased all her fine lines. Bunty, who you'd never know from her Instagram feed suffered from milk rash and cradle cap, got the same treatment. Then Alice added a filter, typed in "Christmas is a-coming," and added some festive emojis and all the usual mummy and fashion blogger hashtags, tagged @BabyDressesUp, who'd sent her the antlers, and pressed "Done." She put her phone face down on the table for 5 minutes, then turned it over to check the number of likes. 547 already? That one would perform well. Matching mom and baby shots always did. Bunty began to howl, causing Alice's left boob to start leaking milk all over her t-shirt. She'd only just gotten dressed, and this was her last clean item of clothing. Sleep deprivation was making her feel disassociated, as if she were watching her life rather than being in it. She wanted to cry. She spent a lot of time wanting to cry. Alice winced as Bunty clamped her hard gums around her sore, cracked nipple. She remembered the idyllic, already breastfeeding shot she posted yesterday on @BabyBunty. The lighting, camera angle, and filter masking the blisters, pain, and tears. How could something as natural as feeding your own child be so ghastly? Why had no one warned her? Sometimes she wanted to strangle the community midwife with the lanyard she wore around her neck, holding her photo ID card, which shouted, "Breast is best! Breast is best!" on repeat, a finger-wagging admonishment to any mother who dared even consider mixing up a bottle of formula. Surely wanting to kill a midwife was not a healthy thought for a new mother. She pushed aside the mashed avocado on toast that she'd photographed at breakfast time and reached into the cupboard, Bunty still attached to Lefty, for the emergency Jaffa cakes. She ate the whole packet. She waited for the usual feeling of self-hatred to emerge. Oh yes, there it was. Bang on time. Once Bunty had finished and burped up a mouthful of regurgitated milk over the other side of Alice's t-shirt, Alice started rooting through the pile of baby clothes from her sponsor, @Baby&Me. She needed to post another baby fashion shot before it was too late for Christmas delivery. She found the cutest double-breasted tweed coat with matching hat and booties. That would do. Now Alice had to go outside. It would show off the coat better, and Alice's small terraced house was so crammed with cardboard boxes, baby toys, piles of washing, and a sink full of washing up that it really wouldn't do for a backdrop. @Alice in Wonderland lived in a tasteful, pristine, aspirational home. Anyhow, walks in the fresh air with your baby were what new moms did, weren't they? They were on brand. She really couldn't face trying to track down another clean top, so she just threw a coat over the baby's sick and milk stain. Hopefully no one would get close enough to smell her. She took her antlers off and added a woolen hat with a jaunty pom-pom on top, @I Love Pom-Poms, to cover the greasy hair. She looked at herself in the hall mirror. At least looking this awful, no one would recognize her. She made a mental note to sort herself out before Max got home. Appearances were important to a man like Max. Before she'd had a baby, he'd never seen her less than perfectly made up, blow-dried, and waxed. It had all gone a little downhill since then. Alice then spent what felt like hours packing the bare necessities into her vast shoulder bag. Muslin, wet wipes, Sudocrem, nipple pads, nappies, teething gel, rattle, and doo-doo, the favorite stuffed rabbit. Since Bunty's arrival 4 months ago, leaving the house felt like preparing for an expedition to Everest. Alice thought back to the days when all she needed were keys, money, and a mobile phone stuffed into a jeans pocket. It felt like a different life, belonging to a very different person. With Bunty all dressed up and strapped into the bugaboo, Alice backed down the steps to the pavement. Bunty started to cry. Surely she couldn't be hungry again already? Alice had thought that she'd be totally attuned to her baby's cries. She'd be able to differentiate hungry from tired and uncomfortable from bored. But the reality was, all Bunty's cries seemed to mean the same thing: disappointment. "This is not what I expected," she appeared to say. Alice understood, because she felt very much the same. She picked up her pace, hoping that the rocking motion of the pushchair Might appease Bunty without making her go to sleep before she'd had her photo taken. Alice headed toward the little playground in the local park. She could put Bunty in the baby swing, which would show off her outfit nicely, and Bunty loved the swing, so hopefully she'd smile. When she frowned, she looked uncannily like Winston Churchill. That look would lose her a whole host of followers. Alice wished that some of her old school or university friends had had babies too. At least then she might have someone to talk to about how she really felt about all this. She could find out if it was normal to find motherhood so hard, so exhausting. But her friends thought that 26 was far too young to be having children. Why on earth hadn't Alice felt the same? She'd been in such a rush to complete the perfect picture: handsome, wealthy husband, terraced Victorian house in the right part of Fulham, and beautiful, happy baby. She was living the dream, wasn't she? Her followers certainly thought she was, which made her feel horribly ungrateful. The playground was empty, but the baby swing wasn't. There was a notebook in it. Alice looked around to see who it might belong to. There was nobody about. She picked up the book. It looked very like the one she had used to note down Bunty's feeds. 5:40 a.m., 10 minutes left breast, 3 minutes right breast. She'd been trying to establish some sort of routine, like the experts had suggested. That hadn't lasted long. She'd eventually thrown the book into the nappy bin in a fit of pique, as it was only serving as a testament to her total failure. Her book had 3 words on the front: Bunty's Feeding Diary. She'd drawn a heart around the word Bunty. This one had 3 words too, but in much more beautiful handwriting: The Authenticity Project. Alice liked the sound of that. Her brands, she reminded herself since Bunty had joined in, was, after all about authenticity. Real-life fashion for real-life mums and their babies. Smiley face. Alice opened the book and was about to start reading when it started to rain. Ugh, even the bloody sky was crying. Big fat drops were already blurring some of the ink. She blotted the rain off the page with her sleeve and popped the book in her bag between a nappy and the baby wipes to keep it dry. She'd figure out what to do with it later. Right now, she had to get home before they got drenched.